lost my notepad. But hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Dream Podcast Radio. My name is Indigo Dream. I am your host for today. Today is the show where we share our topics, our thoughts and topics of interest, and express ourselves and our personal views of goals in a friendly and understanding way. Today's topic is a very special one, as I'll be discussing that which makes many people so very connected to one another in a way that is not always seen, but truly, truly felt. And that would be empathy. So sit back, relax, and have peaceful thoughts as we dive into a world we can all feel some sort of familiarity and connectivity. And speak of, in this episode of Dream Podcast Radio, the tales of the blue empath and the stories of the White Witch. Today I'm joined by a very special guest and an important figure in the study of empathy and emotions, Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Thank you very much for joining me today. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As we spoke about in our phone interview, today we're going to be talking about what we can learn from you and what we can sort of discuss in regards to the world of being an empath, what that entails, what that is, what kind of life that is like, and essentially gain from you what a lot of people have questions about, have always wondered, and just would like to learn more about what it's like being an empath, or even being what an empath is. And for today, I would love to know, what exactly does being an empath mean to you? What is an empath?
To the world around them, and it appears in all different ways and forms. So I can only speak to my own experiences on this, but I do try to help other empaths understand what they're going through and how they are experiencing the world, and get through the hard points in life that is caused by, but also be able to use that ability to understand the world in such a different way in order to reflect upon it and help people around them as well.
One of the things that I've always wondered about, because I only just recently learned about being an empath, because you were actually the one that kind of informed me that the things that I've
Yeah.
been feeling, the things that I've been experiencing and thinking, that kind of tells me that I'm an empath. And I've always wondered, like, what is it that makes a person realize that they are an empath? What makes a person feel really connected to their emotions or the emotions of others? One thing that you told me was that, being an empath means that you care a lot about how other people are feeling. You can feel how it is that they're feeling, and that really kind of cements into your very being. And one thing that I've always wondered is, like, how can a person really distinguish whether or not what they're feeling, or excuse me, what someone else is feeling is just a coincidence, or is it truly that there's some kind of connection going on there? Like, if someone close to me is feeling a certain way and I can feel that, why is that exactly?
I think there's several questions in there, and I'm going to try and answer them in order for you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed when learning more about empathic abilities and that hypersensitivity towards like emotional worlds was that empaths all seem to go through a specific chain of events when they're younger, things to test them and to show them, is what a lot of very spiritual people believe. But I think it's more of situations that you create because of your empathy, and also because of your empathy you're unable to react in certain ways, and so it's this cycle that you go through until you're able to break it by embracing the hypersensitivity.
You wouldn't feel like it's because I feel like some people can kind of get overwhelmed when it comes to their emotions and maybe the emotions of others around them. I know for one fact of mine that I do sometimes let my emotions kind of cloud everything. I let every emotion that I'm feeling kind of surface at once, but at the same time, being surrounded by people who also exhibit certain emotions, it kind of, I guess I act like a sponge,
Yeah.
where it can feel kind of overwhelming because I'm either exerting these emotions or I'm feeling these emotions and I'm feeling others as well, and it makes me concerned. And not concerned, but it makes me think about how other people are feeling at the same time of how
There's a
I'm
lot
feeling.
of emotions that come with that, you know, like when you can't ground yourself properly and you're feeling those around you, it can make you angry, it can make you upset, it can make you scared or fearful. It's a very overwhelming experience. Like, I will never forget being at work one day and one of the older women that I worked with got into a fight with one of the cooks. This was at a restaurant, and
Jeez.
she was so upset that she was crying. And I, standing across the kitchen from her, started crying and shaking myself, and I couldn't help myself. And I had to leave for several minutes just to
It's
reground myself because her emotions were so overwhelming to me.
but it's not always it's not always a negative thing either,
No,
right? Because
no,
sometimes you
no,
could be
not at
just
all.
be you can sometimes be feeling overwhelming joy, like
Yes.
basic everyday goodness, and then somebody else is just also having a really good day, and that kind of just stays with you as well.
But there's also more that you can do when you embrace your empathy and you practice your empathy. You start hitting this point where you're able to take in other people's emotions and transform them,
Hmm.
where you can soak up that bad and turn it into good and you send that back out.
Would that would that kind of like lay in terms of karma by chance? Would you say
I
like
don't,
you do something good, good happens to
we
you?
actually call it alchemy
Ooh,
because it's the transformation of a type of energy without use of anything else.
there isn't like it because
You yourself are used as the medium for that alchemy.
right. I
Mhm.
really like thinking of it that way. Now that
Mhm.
you say that, that's such a neat way of looking at it too. Because in
I
that case,
prefer to go for the more scientific terms on things.
and like a lot of empaths can call themselves scientists now, in a way.
In
Because
a way, it's everything that's talked about is part of theoretical science, which is very important for the future of science.
I feel like when it comes to the study of emotions and the learning of how other people are feeling, especially when when you and I are talking about it towards each other, there's a sense of relief and a sense of, I suppose, like new understanding, because when somebody's feeling a certain kind of way and hear that others are feeling that exact way, it's a relief knowing that you're not the only person that is feeling that, and it's good to know that other people like understand what that feeling is like. So like when somebody says I understand how you feel, it takes a whole new meaning,
Mhm.
because anybody can say like I get how you feel, and as a means to just end the conversation. But when somebody truly understands how you feel, there's a whole different ballgame to that.
I
It's
think I can actually give you a little bit of insight into that because this is one of the cycles that I was talking
ooh,
about
please
that
do.
helps me identify other empaths.
You don't have like an
Um,
empath radar on you, do you?
in a way, because once you learn what was actually happening in your own life, you are able to see other people going through the same thing in no matter how different the situation is. But one of the things that happens when an empath is denying their own abilities and really shunning them away is that we are in our lower vibrations, is what we like to call it in the more spiritual world.
Okay.
Um, but just like a lower energy, the manifestation idea that what you think is what you receive. And when you're trying not to be yourself, you're in this very low energy and you attract other people to you who are also in that energy, which leaves you feeling very isolated, because you can attract very negative people towards you. And when you finally start using those situations and the inevitable blow-ups that happen because of that to learn how to love yourself because you don't agree with the person who is not also loving you, you start finding yourself in a slightly higher vibration every time you go through this cycle. And eventually you will attract people to you who are also in that higher vibration, people who understand you and are coming from the same place.
And that's in that sense. It's just sometimes it's just then to be better to be, in a good mood, just to overall feel like a better person, because that way.
Now, remember I said the trick is to embrace your empathy.
So
So
it's
you
okay to
can't
sometimes
really
feel that
shun
way.
off bad moods, but it's how you use them because empathic people tend to want to be more compassionate people because we feel so hard. We want to use that as compassion and not as the more negative side of like hatred or shirking people. And when you start doing that, even though the emotion is lower, the way that you feel about yourself as a whole is higher.
So it's better to then just accept how you're feeling,
Yeah.
and just rather than letting yourself be buried by whatever it is you're feeling, or even taking a little too high about how you're feeling, to just really take some time to understand what it is you're feeling, and to
Hmm.
use that as a way of kind of learning about yourself, and even learning about others in that case, right? Because I don't know who said this, but to know yourself is to also know those around you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
I truly believe that.
I think this is a beautiful way to look at it, because if there's one thing that I feel can bring people closer together, it's to kind of look at themselves first, and to see, like, what is it about me that I like, what is it about me that I don't like, and what is it that I want other people to feel, and how I wish that, in a sense of sharing emotions, sharing feelings, to feel connected to other people, you really have to feel connected to yourself in that sense, because there's no way of reaching out to someone if you yourself can't grab a hold of it.
I think this gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about other things that happen
Ooh,
before you realize and accept the empathy. Um, you won't understand because you grow up empathic that you're soaking up other people's emotions and you'll think those emotions actually belong to yourself.
right.
And so, like, a lot of people who are empathic, they think that they have experienced mood swings, they think that they have experienced extreme anger, um, and things that are coming from nowhere, which often leads them to believe that it might be psychological, the cause of it. Which is very sad because what they're actually feeling is the people around them. But when you're not embracing your abilities and you're not able to, as I've said before, ground yourself and come back to your sense of self and find a structured way to embrace these people's feelings, you end up embracing them too much and becoming what I call a mirror. And when you mirror somebody's feelings back at them, they're forced to face who they really are, but that allows the empath to also really lose themselves. You won't feel like yourself, and you can spend a long time. a very, very long time, years, acting in this way without knowing it.
There was something that I looked up. I don't know how this might relate to, you know, the whole point of being an empath, but there was something that I kind of stumbled upon when I was doing some research, and that is the topic of, and maybe you've heard of this, the topic of ego death. Has Do you know what that might be immediately? Have you heard of such a thing?
There's a lot of empaths out there that will try to put you on the track towards being an extremely fearful empath, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that. As somebody who is not very fearful myself, I am determined to find a way to be a more outgoing empath and to
Mm,
use that still to like bring good to the lives of people around me. But so ego death has a lot to do with trying to be rid of the shadow self in a sense, at least the way that
shadow
it's
self.
talked about. Yeah, and this is where you start getting into psychology versus spiritualism, where they become very, very similar.
Right.
Um,
And you're pretty well versed in both of those aspects too, because and
yeah.
like you said, there is a line between what is and what isn't spiritual and psychological, but there's also a line where it's like they kind of blend in to become one and the same, and I feel
Hmm.
like that line is so overlooked because a lot of people uh tend to think one way and then feel another, and then soon realize like those things are kind of one and the same. They can explain how they're feeling and just kind of go with that knowledge to either do good with themselves or maybe not. um Hopefully, obviously not the
Yeah.
latter. Because we don't want people to, look at themselves and see only the bad, see only the negative, feel only the negative.
But you
You,
can't be all good either.
you like
I
not
really believe in an embracing of the ego and an embracing of the darker sides of oneself in order to utilize those parts of yourself to also do good in the world.
right. And
Hmm.
it's it's kind of cool to think about in the sense that when you're taking in all this knowledge, taking in all these things that you're kind of opening up about yourself, you learn a thing or two when it comes to who you truly are, and you use that newfound knowledge to kind of learn how other people feel as well. And there's a newfound appreciation or newfound respect when it comes to how other people are feeling. Like you kind of learn like I'm not the only person feeling this. Maybe when someone else, or someone next to me or someone around me is feeling the same, there's a way that I know I can help them, or there's a way that I can educate them. But at the same time, that's all you really can do, because
I
the
mean, there's
rest would
more
be
to
up to
being an
them.
empath than just work or it being difficult. I mean, you do experience the pure emotion of the people around you, but there are so many more living things in this world as well.
True. If you
Not only
can,
that, like you get to experience everybody's experience.
yeah,
And I'm not saying in like the energy vampire kind of way. I'm saying like just in that pure blissful way. You experience so much more of the world, so much more deeply, so much more visually, so much more audibly. There are moments when being an empath is some of the most wonderful things that you can imagine. This is why so many empaths tend to end up in art because they want to share that with the world around them.
that's a beautiful way to put it. Cause there's a lot of people in the world that, maybe not be able to kind of verbally speak out what it is that they're thinking or feeling, but I'll be damned if they can't put it visually. A lot of people are very skilled in doing that, just putting their emotions in a way that they can see it. And I feel like
I've
a lot of people can learn from that.
mhm.
You know,
I've mentioned the hypersensitive person, which is a psychological study
yes.
of what is essentially empathic ability. And one of the people who's worked closest with being involved in that study is Alanis Morissette.
Can you tell me about her?
Alanis Morissette's a musician who has created some of the most intense music, very long selling. I encourage you to check out some of her songs, which includes the song Ironic. I think everybody pretty much knows of that one. And she talked in the movie about hypersensitive people, about how she uses this ability to sense everybody's emotions and to like really feel very deeply. She puts that into her music, and then she loves to go on stage and pick up all of the crowd's emotions and to put that into her music and to throw that back out at them, and that it creates this very high energy but a whole rainbow of emotions, feelings through thousands of people in the same space.
I think when it comes to just because music has such a way to like really touch people and really make them feel a certain way, make them think a certain way. Music is one of the
Hmm.
stronger suits when it comes to kind of like forming a bridge with people. Everyone's done it. I'm sure everyone has had. I know I'm guilty of this, but you're
Hmm.
listening to a song, you're driving home or whatever. You have a song on the radio, and you're just picturing yourself in a music video or some shit. Like I've done it. I always do it. Everyone's done it. But the power of music to make people, you know, feel a kind of way, to think a kind of way, is one of the best outlets or even inputs when it comes to kind of understanding how or cementing how it is that you're feeling in that particular time or even in general, because you could listen to a song that is kind of old and it'll take you back to a time where you were feeling a kind of way, or a way that you aren't currently. um, I do it frequently where I listen to songs from way back when, and I'm taken aback to the time where it's like I feel innocent and I don't feel the way that I am currently. I feel like a kid again listening to this song. I remember, coming home to my mom, already having, lunch ready, and a good time where
Hmm.
I wasn't feeling maybe overwhelming negativity in daily life now. And when it comes to feeling the emotions that people can place out in the world, whether it's by music or by art or just by you know writing or speaking, one thing that a lot of people have in common is that when they really try to put themselves out there to express how it is that they're feeling, it's strong. It works.
Hmm.
There's I don't think there's
It
a
affects
better way.
people.
It affects people. It affects people to a staggering degree. How if you put any kind of effort into expressing how your emotions are, those emotions are gonna reach people. Those emotions are
Mhm.
definitely gonna set into whoever it is that is seeing it, hearing it, reading it, listening to it. It works. It really really works. I remember uh to go back to music, you can listen to anything at all, and it'll trigger some kind of emotion inside you, whether it's a dormant one, a current one, or just a in general one. There's so many ways a person can start to feel a kind of way and understand how that other person was feeling as well. So
Hmm.
there's a bridge that can be formed there, and that bridge, I believe, can be one of the best keys to true connectivity to people and just how people can, kind of come together in a way.
I
Um,
believe that to be true just about any art, though. From Beethoven to the man who makes Pokemon rugs on TikTok.
are you kidding me? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no better feeling there's nothing better than familiarity and like I get that. Like that guy, what that guy's doing, get it. I feel it.
That's just how he expresses himself to this world, and it's actually become very watched after because so many people connect with it. Art is just a way of connecting with the people around you on a different kind of emotional level that words can't do. And that includes words too, but
Yeah.
it becomes so philosophical that it connects with you in your soul in a way that cannot be described.
If there's any way, dreamers out there listening, if you ever want to feel an emotion that someone else is feeling, buy a rug or read a book, one of the two. Because that way, if ever you're wondering, like, how do I do this? There you go. Two easy steps: buy a rug and read a book. You know, or listen to a song that you haven't listened to before. Try something new in your life. Because
One of the things that I really like to suggest when you're trying to reconnect with that very creative side of yourself is to find a movie or a show that you watched a lot as a child. Everybody has that one that they hit replay on a million times. And go ahead and rewatch or re-listen to that because it can be very eye-opening and really ignite that part of you, that child in you
yeah,
again.
I and admittedly, the one of the I'm glad you mentioned that because I'll throw this little sprinkle of detail in there. Is like one of my go-to things is Harry Potter, and
I love it.
I fucking love Harry Potter, and for so many reasons too. Because if ever, and this happens every single time, like there's always a fucking Harry Potter marathon going on or something,
Mhm.
and I will watch the whole thing every single. I don't know how many times I've watched it. I'm
Oh
26.
my.
I've watched it 1,000 times already, and I will always be taken back to when I was like 10. I was like, I don't know what this is. I feel like a child again. I don't have to worry about debt or something like that.
Mhm.
I feel good. But I also love watching I love watching and reading Harry Potter because it makes me feel connected to my younger sister, who, as you know, I've told you this before. She is, the light of my life. One of the reasons why I
Mhm.
I try to be as good of a man as I possibly can be for her because my little sister is just pure innocence. The world has no effect on her whatsoever. Just absolute no care in the world about anything. She's just
Mhm.
living. And she's obsessed with Harry Potter. Obsessed. So whenever I watch it or read it, I feel her. I think of her and I feel good. I feel good every single time. Because,
I think
I'm taken
your inner
aback.
child connects with her inner child, which is her whole self.
It's everything about her.
Mhm.
Just either when we were kids or as we are now as adults. I feel a connection towards her because
She shows you the
whenever
world from a different perspective.
she shows me a world in which strife and sadness, fear, none of that exists. None of it exists, and I think it's a kind of I think it's a feeling that I feel everyone needs in their life at least
In her
one
world,
point in time.
it's not that none of it exists, Indigo. It's that she accepts all of it.
She accepts it and just doesn't give a shit.
Yep.
She accepts it because
There's a lot
it's
that
nothing
everybody
is gonna
can
happen.
take from them.
you know, and
But if she were to face any of it, she would still be able to accept it.
I think so. Mm,
and still try to get more, do better.
oh yeah, she's one of those girls where it's like if something does it, you know, if she falls, she'll get back up on her own.
Mhm.
Scraped knees, she'll put a band-aid on it herself. She's the tough cookie,
Mhm.
and it's those kinds of people
That just
that
never gets her down.
people that tend to be like that. I find always fascinating, and whenever I meet someone like that, whether I'm just cruising about my day or just meet someone randomly who's like that, I feel a connection there somehow because I immediately think of her as like you're someone that I'm probably never gonna see you again, but I hope the rest of your time, at the very least for the day, turns out just swimmingly because your vibe, your emotions are something that a lot of people don't have, or a lot of people don't see or understand, and people need someone like you in their life.
There's another beautiful part of being an empath when you're able to learn about how to be on your own just from meeting the people around you.
And that just brings to the topic of today of just being an empath means to feel and understand how a person is, and allowing that to kind of express itself in you, like how is it that they're feeling, how does it make me feel, and it sometimes it can be a great thing, it can be such a great thing sometimes, and I feel like everyone needs those moments in their life where it, maybe they're in a rough spot, they just have those emotions somehow, and I feel like everyone deserves that experience. I don't care how rough you've made your life or how rough your life has been. Obviously, I do care, but for the point of context, you deserve that moment in your life. You deserve those times where it's this is a good feeling. I feel happy. I feel good. I feel content. I feel not negative.
Hmm.
Um, one of the questions that I want to ask you, Rachel,
Hmm.
in regards to everything that we just discussed, is what are what are some of your personal goals in being the way that you are? What is something that you hope to be able to teach people, or maybe somebody in the world, one of our dreamers out there listening, who is feeling the same things that we're feeling, but don't quite understand? What is something that you can tell us about yourself that can help us understand what it's like to be an empath, essentially? What are your dreams of being the way that you are? Let's start with that.
I guess you could say that I always found being empathic to be highly overwhelming. If you're talking about hypersensitivity, I'm kind of way up there, and it made life really, really difficult for a long time to the point where I just became angry because it felt like everything I kept trying just kept failing, and I couldn't really understand what was going on. And when I finally met others, because that's kind of how it worked for me, was that I met others who reached out to me and said, like, you understand that you are this kind of person, you're hypersensitive, you're empathic, and they started encouraging me to really embrace what they called gifts. And I still have a hard time doing that myself because it's not been too terribly long now. But they encouraged me to embrace what was happening, what was going on, and to learn from their experiences, and shared stories with me, and informed me like one of the best things that you can do, and we don't know why, but you can, is to use it. Use it, to help people around you. Use it to help those that are able to be helped. Um, Ground, love yourself, regardless of anything. Doesn't really matter. You've got to. It's called survival.
Do you believe that people like us that are out there in the world, maybe they're not even listening, but do you believe if a person who really wants to understand, what they are, who they are as a person, do you think that they can achieve their own dreams, their own goals, utilizing this kind of information and just learning to roll with it, I guess you can say?
I think for all of us, there comes a point where you realize that everything that you've been drawn to, wanting, and doing in the past were all needed for a reason, and you end up finding the reason in the long run. Because using your ability to fully understand another human being is something that's so important in this world that it's almost like the world sets it up to be able to be used perfectly.
Because
You've
sometimes,
just
like,
got to be open to it.
yeah, people can't always figure it out. Like, there will be times where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but
And that's where I can bring it back to something I think we were discussing before you started the podcast, which is why so many people have been called to reach out to others and
yes.
share. hmm This has been, um, so I'm going to get a little more into the very theoretical
Ooh, go for it.
portion of this. Astrologically speaking, we've had a lot of really major events in the universe in general. Um,
You were
and it's
mentioning a while ago
believed.
about the jeez. I'll be honest, I cannot remember the terminology you said, but please go on.
Are you talking about the Lions Gate?
Yes, was that it?
That one happens every year, but we had a slight planetary alignment of our solar system just back last year, I believe. And in preparation for that, and then in the fallout of that, there have been what a lot of people believe to be spiritual awakenings. And for those of us who were already awoken, we were called to reach out to others, and that has inspired even new awakeners to reach out to others still and to help each other through this understanding of what it is that we're actually feeling, what it is we're actually sensing. Like we as a species for so long put that empathy to the back of our minds, believing that it was the conscious that would really propel society, but we are still just living creatures, and empathy is one of our base id ways of interacting with the world around us so we could survive, and now it's needed again.
So even the universe is pretty much telling us, like, here's a hint, and then it'll just hand it right over to us at a moment in time. And
And so many of us felt that call to try and help the people around us.
maybe that's what happened with me. Maybe that's why I realized that this is something I absolutely want to do, to learn more about the type of person that I am, and how it is that by learning the type of person that I am, I can help others figure out who they are and what they can then learn or teach other people from what they learned about themselves, a sort of chain reaction, if you will.
Mhm.
This awakening that a lot of people experience is, now that I understand it a bit more, is probably one of the coolest things I think anyone can finally, it's kind of like an eye opener, where it's like, I I figured something out. Now I gotta lay the rest of the tracks ahead of me. I
I
have
think
been given the tracks. Now I have to place them down.
it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Like, call it spiritual, call it scientific, call it a coincidence, because it's a natural phenomenon for human beings to make these kinds of leaps and bounds, to go technological and then go emotional. And we're in one of those cycles, but it's one of the biggest cycles that we've seen as a species for thousands upon thousands of years, and has been very moving for so many people
Mm.
on this planet. And I'm very excited to see where it takes us as people who occupy this space, you know.
I think if there's anyone who can possibly put it in a way that simpletons like myself can start to understand, I feel like you're someone that I would definitely want to be able to learn from as much as I possibly could, while also just going through life, just being able to figure things out, occasionally on my own. It's always
Mhm.
grand to have help, but at the end of the day, you know, you're someone who's gonna always be around. You yourself is gonna be who's around the most. So to take time to kind of look inside yourself to understand and learn from yourself is extremely important
Oh
to
yeah.
to everyone, really.
And I learn every day from everyone around me, and it's a continuous cycle of learning, but where will it take you is the question.
Do you what would you say to others? Do you have advice for people that are like us who might be afraid to kind of start this path to self understanding and the understanding of others?
My biggest advice would be rely on your own faith. Everybody has some kind of faith in something, be it a certain type of religion, be it science, be it the nothingness. It's still a faith, and it gives you a real sense of being able to understand what's going on around you. In every type of faith, there is some explanation to what it is that you're feeling. So rely on what it is that your heart knows to be true and absolutely trust your gut. And if you feel like somebody's going to be a good influence in your life, go ahead and reach out to them. They've probably already been waiting for you.
That's a very great way to put that.
Yep.
I've been waiting for you. Come sit by
I've
the fire.
been waiting.
Yes, rubbing my cat. I've been expecting
Yes. Yeah, yeah. A lot of that.
you. To the dreamers out there listening, if ever you're having moments in your life where you're not exactly sure what it is that you're feeling, or even begin to understand what you can do about it, I hope you're able to take from this what you can, especially from Rachel. Rachel is probably, and I'll say this to you right now. You're probably one of the most special people I've ever met. There's
Oh,
something about you that I feel there's so much that can be learned from, that can help a person kind of get a sort of jump start into understanding how they can be, or who they are, so to speak, and just essentially going into the direction that they're wanting to go. Because deep down, everyone wants to be a good person. Everyone wants to be a good person.
I think so.
And in doing so, in the desire to be a good person, there comes the opportunity to really put it to the test. Everybody has a moment where it's like, this is the chance to really see myself for who I can be, and I'm given the chance to show others who I can
Mhm.
be. And in doing that, that reflects on others. Others can start that process all over again. It's kind of like a this is probably not a good analogy, but it's kind of like a good plague sort of thing. It's
That
a
is a perfect analogy, actually.
it's a good virus, a good plague that can infect all of mankind with good energy and just essentially share the broad spectrum of what it's like to be the person that you're trying to be.
And what can
And
I say? I'm just the kind of person that wants to see just how much damage, I mean, goodness, that can do.
you heard it here, folks. The white witch strikes again. I think it's a great thing, though. I think it's a great thing. And I feel like if there's anything anyone can take from this, it's that you are you have the capabilities of being your own teacher while also taking advantage of just learning from other people. A lot of people
Mhm.
tend to not do that anymore, and it's sad. It's sad. A lot of people like to kind of keep to themselves sometimes, but opening up, while scary, while it can be scary, I'll admit it, can be one of the best things a person can do
Definitely.
because in opening yourself up, in expressing who you are, and showing what you're feeling, other people are able to, and some people might not, but other people who do can take that into themselves and help and have that help them do the exact same thing.
Agree.
There's a great thing about having someone like you around, Rachel. There's a very great thing with having someone like you around.
What?
there's a good thing with having someone who knows what the fuck they're feeling, and then just having people learn and take that knowledge with them.
Oh, but I am far from perfect, trust me.
And no one is. No one is. No one is ever truly perfect. No one is even close to being perfect.
The only thing you can do perfectly is accepting everything around you.
And I think that's what makes people perfect. The
Exactly.
the perfection of imperfection.
Mhm.
The always growing pursuit of knowledge and the always growing pursuit of understanding. The
Remember, we are strong and adaptable.
never closing bridge of connectivity towards one another. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a great thing. And, just dreamers out there listening, just take from here today what you can, but also take the fact that if you are having these moments in your life where you're feeling or your emotions are not always something that you understand, you're not alone. You're not alone in the world. There are people out there that are just like you, that are wanting to be able to grow in self understanding and that care about how they're feeling and how others are feeling. And if you match that category, congratulations. You're an empath. You are.
And trust me, we are more than happy to help.
Absolutely. Uh, I believe that covers everything. Is there a personal story that you would like to tell us in regards to maybe someone that you've helped in kind of understanding, who they are? Has someone ever approached you and just be like, because of you, I was able to learn, aside from me, of course, because I really
I
just did that.
I like I said, I have been a very, very hypersensitive person for a very long time, which almost gives me what people would call psychic abilities. And I have had a lot of moments where the eventual gratitude was extremely rewarding for me. Because like I said, there are a lot of moments when you're younger that are just really difficult because you don't understand what's going on. But when I was in middle school, I went to a very urban school system, and we had all of the crimes and problems that you would expect in a urban school. and I was friends with, or at least thought I was friends with, a girl who was in a very sticky situation that she thought was cool and hip and so adult. But we were 13.
Hmm.
And um, she made me aware of this as well as several other students in the class, and they all thought she was very cool and very hip. And I understood her fear, her anxiety, her anger as well, which led me to go like, this is not good, and to quote unquote turn her in. At which point her family made her move
Hmm.
away from everybody and got her out of town. And she ended up coming back to school a little later on, back to our school system a little later on. But several years later, when I was in college, she sent me a message. She found me on the new Facebook. It was new at the time.
Hmm.
And sent me a message and told me how thankful she was in the long run for that moment, because it was a big moment in her life. And she's apparently thought a lot about how that moment could have changed everything, and how I was the only one to stand up and look out for her best interest in the long run. And
Damn.
said something along the lines of like, my husband and my children I have now, in part thanks to you.
I think that's great, Rachel. I really do think that's great. It's it's moments like those where it's like you do sometimes feel like something you did might not be right, but it can turn out to be probably one of the best things.
She thought I did it because I was mad at her because we had had a falling out just before that. And she told me she didn't want to be my friend anymore. But I did it because I was her friend.
I think stumbles. I think when somebody has a stumble in their life, it can sometimes be good things because that can lead to a sprint.
Mhm.
And people will always have you know, those times in life where it's like this sucks, but then later on it's like I'm doing so much better now. I think everyone has those moments of, I wouldn't call them backfires, more hiccups, sort of hiccups in life that are kind of brought by somebody else, but that can be probably one of the best outcomes. It's a sort of like wake up call.
I will just say it was a very enlightening moment, because for me in my past, the outrage, the anger, the upsetness that I faced because of what happened, and everyone else being upset for her as well, felt to me like something that was just very heavy on my past. And then when I received that message from her, and she told me like, I think back now and I'm so thankful you were a good friend. And to see like how time changes so much to a situation as well, it gives you a lot of perspective.
And just the taking time for oneself is probably always probably always one of the better things a person can do, especially when
Definitely.
the that choice to do so is brought upon by someone else. It's
Yes,
it might feel harsh.
I suggested a lot. I call it letting go of the wheel. So much because we are so compassionate. We want to help, we want to make changes, we want to do things, and we try to force the people around us to do things based on our knowledge. But sometimes you just have to let go of the wheel and give it time.
Yeah, I
People have to do what they need to do. So the best thing you can do is give the message, try to help, do what you can, but sometimes you gotta let go of the wheel.
You did what you had to do. If when a person is close to you and you see that they're not exactly going down the direction that they say they wanted to go, or the direction that you're hoping they go, sometimes you have to kind of be that brick
Tough
wall.
love is a concept. Yep.
Yeah, you have to be the brick wall sometimes that they crash into. Because I think it would be better that it's you rather than something else that's worse, you know, like
Yeah.
life. I'd rather, if I care about someone, I'd rather it be me that, tells them, like, you stop
It's
rather
important to know
than,
when to pull your punches too, though.
yeah. You don't want to be like the nail in the coffin. You'd rather just be the nail touching the coffin before it gets to that point,
I was
essentially.
called bossy a lot as a kid.
Mm, I can see
I
that.
could, and I could be very bossy. I could, yeah,
But
no, when I was much
there's a
more
good aspect to that though.
stubborn about my own opinion.
It's
Yeah.
not like you're like, 9 to 5 manager bossy. You're you're the good kind of bossy. You're the motherly type of bossy.
That is learned over many, many
Yeah.
years how to embrace that more feminine aspect.
It's I'd rather receive tough love and then everything turn out peachy rather than, the harsh truth of this person is actually not who I need in my life. I wouldn't want that. I would rather just be the, have a friend telling you need to stop doing what you're doing.
Now make sure that you take that and utilize it yourself as well.
Ooh, we're getting personal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this afterwards. I'm definitely gonna be taking this afterward. It's true. It's true. It's true. There's been a moment in my life where it's like, this person I care for very deeply, and turned out to be the brick wall that I didn't want to crash into. And maybe it had to happen. Maybe it was time. But
Mhm.
there is a part of me, and there's a very very sincere part of me where it's like I hope we're able to reconvene in the future and just take what we learned from the time apart.
You don't always get a conclusion, but sometimes you do get one later.
Yeah. Yeah, it might not be immediate, it might not be when you want it, but sooner or later, that chapter, that page will be turned eventually. Whether it's by your hand or by their hand. There's something that can be learned with taking time. Everyone needs to take time for themselves every once in a while. Just to kind of like look back and look at yourself. I think it's
Self
those moments where it's
reflection's
like
very important. Yes.
it's those moments where it's like I need to step back and maybe I just realize like I'm going off the path a little bit. Let me straighten myself out and then keep going. If there's a crossroads ahead where we meet again, then I'll meet you halfway.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. That's a very nice way to put it, Rachel.
And one thing that I would also say that's super important that many of us have a really hard time with, and this is just people in general. If your path starts going somewhere else, don't fight it. Let it go.
Mm,
Let it go somewhere else. You don't always have to see the end of the journey when you're on the road.
that's heavy. I hope you dreamers out there are listening to that. Take that with you. Etch it into something if you have to, because that's pretty important. That's extremely important stuff.
You'd be surprised what you're able to accomplish when you keep working with where your heart's leading you.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, I believe that is actually all the time that I have for right now. This has been truly an eye-opening experience speaking with you. I feel like I
Yeah.
learned a tremendous amount of stuff for myself from you, and I hope the dreamers out there take from this exceptionally well. There's so much that can be learned from these kinds of things that a lot of people have had questions about, have been feeling and not understanding, like I said before. And I hope after today, I hope after this episode, there's some kind of relief or some kind of newfound understanding or newfound respect for who they are and for those around them as well. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Rachel, for being with me here today. This has truly been a momentous occasion for me, and I really cannot thank you enough.
All my pleasure, and I am so honored. Thank you for having me.
And to the dreamers out there listening, thank you for tuning in. This has been Indigo Dream with the Dream Podcast Radio starring Rachel, a very, very good friend, the White Witch. And we will be heading on out of here. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And I hope you all have a very, very good day.
Bye.